Quarantine Chat with the Kamikaze team. Today, we are super excited to be talking to a very accomplished webcomic artist. Her name is Kel McDonald. She's a fantasy and folklore webcomic artist. She's worked on series like Sorcery 101, Misfits of Avalon, The Stone King, Cautionary Fables, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Glutton for Punishment, and then currently she's working on The Chosen One. And that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to her work. So yay, Kel, thanks for joining.
Thanks for joining
Thanks for having me.
How have you been this year?
All right. Well, you know, comic book freelancers aren't famous for leaving their apartments very often, so quarantine hasn't really interrupted that much.
Okay. So is it like at this point, you know, we are in August, are you starting to go stir crazy at all, or are you just kind of whatever?
No, I'm all right. It's I'm not too stir crazy because I do go jogging in the morning, and that's keeping me mostly sane.
That sounds like a good outlet.
Yeah, it does sound like a good outlet.
And I'm wearing a mask while drawing, so everyone while jogging, wear a mask. So.
And also drawing, if you're doing commissions.
While drawing, that was impressive.
Yeah, while jogging, so.
That's awesome.
I appreciate it, because when we were in Atlanta, that was one of the things that drove me crazy going to the park.
Yeah.
So
I know that you've published a lot of comics over the past 10 years. Now you lean towards fantasy a lot, but you also like to kind of subvert or do new things with the tropes in that genre. Can you tell us a little bit about what about that genre makes you gravitate towards that, and how your craft has evolved?
So for the most part, I really like werewolves, so that's partly why I lean towards fantasy. And all my favorite stories are when they're using the supernatural as a metaphor for something. So like when Buffy was airing, that was one of the things that like got me. I was really into it like almost immediately, and that's sort of what partly inspired me to start working in that kind of genre. And I like to pick structures apart. There's the stereotype of like the kid that you show is going to grow up to be an inventor takes the toaster apart, and I like to do that, but with writing. Like I like to see like, well, what is this piece in the story doing? Like, how's that affecting everything else? So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I did notice the running werewolf theme. I was reading through some of the City Between, and I was like, oh yeah, werewolf.
Yeah, they're all werewolves.
That's awesome.
Were you always into werewolves, even growing up, or?
Yeah, it's kind of a thing. Like I just think they're neat, and now that I've gotten older, it's kind of werewolves are the proletariat of movie monster supernatural creatures. Like obviously vampires are the 1%, and so
I have not heard this take.
I like it though. I want to hear more.
Well, so vampires being the 1% is a thing that like some people have talked about, like because even when Dracula was first written, that's like if you like read the original, part of why Mina and Jonathan Harker, they're supposed to be like the moral middle class who are fighting against the decadent, useless aristocracy. Like that was kind of like there's definitely that sort of vibe of like the rich nobles of Europe are useless and we don't need them anymore. So that's why you have it. Obviously, there's also like the dangerous sexuality angle, but if you look at like Dracula's obviously account, Lucy, the one who becomes a vampire, while she is friends with Mina, she is presented as kind of frivolous and that's partly because she is super wealthy and that has sort of carried over through a lot of vampire media. And then I like werewolves, as we know them, are actually a fairly newer idea, because most of what we associate as a werewolf was made for the 1940s Wolfman movie. And before that, you don't really have silver bullets or the full moon causing a transformation. Before that, it's a lot of folklore that's just, they just turn into a wolf and there isn't really a reason for it.
Right.
But so like, I like taking that sort of idea as like werewolves are someone who are more human, but they're only considered human as long as they're not too aggressive or too like, so it's like their privileges are conditional to them being more in control and behaved. So
I love that. I feel like I'm gonna like see werewolves in a whole different light now.
I've always loved werewolves, but I've never like, everybody's like, but why do you like werewolves? And I'm like, I don't know, it's a fucking werewolf. It's awesome. But
I
like,
just think they're neat.
I just think they're neat. But the way you just described it, like I didn't know I needed it explained that way, because that's
It's also
yeah.
there's someone who they are like kicked out of society, but then because a lot of people are like, well, wolves in packs, it started to develop a thing where like becoming a werewolf gets you kicked out of like the regular world, but then it gives them a new community that they can bond with this thing that has isolated them. So it's very easy to write a found family story with werewolves.
Oh, that's true.
That's
very
awesome. I'm very fascinated. That's awesome. And I know like you've done so even though you do kind of stay within like fantasy and folklore, you do work on several webcomics and ongoing series. How do you transition from one project to the next?
So for the most part is I just like to plan stuff way in ahead, and it's kind of, I jump to what's next based on how quickly the idea like develops. And so I know like I always want to know how a thing ends before I jump to a new thing, before I start it. So it's kind of if I know how it ends, that's when I start to like approach that story and making it. So
Do even though you have the end in mind, does that end ever change as you write the story?
So for Sorcery 101, I tweaked it a little bit, the end a little bit, but like I still more or less stayed with the end. And the thing with Sorcery 101 is I started it in high school. So a lot of the stuff like I articulated to you now, I could not articulate like why I was drawn to werewolves in high school.
Right.
And it was while working on it, I noticed there were things I wanted to do that I couldn't do with that series. So I did like wrap it up a little bit sooner, but I did keep the ending I had in mind.
Okay, cool. I'm curious, what do you think this crazy year is going to do to the indie comic scene? Has it affected your work at all?
So for the most part, I think as far as COVID and quarantine, it's going to affect comic shops and monthlies more. But most people who do like a web comic or a Kickstarter now and then, like those, they're going to be relatively the same, like production wise and getting it out there. The biggest change is going to be like what will happen to the post office.
Yeah, that's a big
so
one. We're struggling with that as well.
But as far as like getting comics out there, I think most webcomics are going to be pretty much unaffected because like it's online. People don't need to go to a shop to get it and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you're working on a new project, The Chosen One.
It's You Are the Chosen One.
You Are the Chosen One. And that
Yes.
is coming out through your Patreon, right?
Yes, putting up a page a week for anyone that backs my Patreon.
Awesome.
Wow.
And can you tell us a little bit about that project for anyone who hasn't heard of it?
You Are the Chosen One is about 23 kids are given the same prophecy dream telling them they're the chosen one. And you're reading basically how all of them react, and slowly but surely they're all one by one gonna drop out of this becoming the chosen one sort of mission. And so it's deconstructing the hero's journey, and using each of the kids to like comment on a different part of it.
That's
Oh
awesome.
wow,
That is
sounds like a
really
reality
brilliant.
show.
So is that why there's 23 of them?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
'Cause we're gonna watch them like drop out like one by one. So
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. What was the inspiration for doing the story with 23 different characters?
so 23 was the original like idea that I had was just, well, what if there was more than one chosen one? And said thing that is choosing a chosen one was maybe hedging their bets. And then 23 is just when I was like, I don't think I'm coming up with new ideas now, so that's when I'm going to stop adding kids to this story. Is
Okay.
that it's like after that point I was like, I think I've gotten all the different results and endings to this chosen one story that I could have wanted.
Whoa, that's crazy. That's a pretty ambitious concept.
That's really ambitious. Like how
So
long?
do you like does each of the 23 characters kind of, are they fleshed out fully, or like what's the
So they're more or less fleshed out, but like not all the, like I said, they're gonna one by one drop out. So there is one kid who, based on the pages that are up on my Patreon, has already dropped out, and he drops out on page 5 because he gets the dream and then he goes back to bed. And that's his whole story. Like he goes, that was a weird dream, and he just doesn't like pursue it any further.
wow.
And so yeah.
Kara, you seem to have a visceral reaction to developing 23 characters.
No, to me it's just like it's just a lot. And like the idea of developing 23 characters just seems like so much, but I think Kelly, you're doing it like, I don't know, I think the way that Kel's going about it is the right way to say that, you know, okay, there's only one, you know, major character that you have to do a lot of development for, but from there the development kind of goes, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets,
because I have 4 kids don't make it past chapter 1, and kind of their various reasons for dropping out are kind of to foreshadow the reasons you're going to see other kids drop out. So
oh, okay. No, I just think that's really,
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, and it kind of goes in line with what you were saying with, you know, wanting to do new things with the genre, right? I mean, The Chosen One is such a tired cliche.
Yeah.
We kind of try to do a little, we kind of work off that cliche as well in Kamikaze. Was there a particular, like, was there something that just kind of lit up in your head with the idea? Like,
so it started with the thing that I told you where it was, what if there was more than one chosen one? And then I came up with one kid's arc and was like, that's a really good idea, but for it to work there needs to be a bunch of other kids that were also following. So
got it.
It was kind of like one kid solidified really fast, and then I moved on from there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Do you find that the main character solidified really fast, or was it like a side character who solidified?
So the thing is like I said, like they're gonna drop out one by one. I don't want to tip my hand on which kids are gonna make it to the end. So
Okay.
I made it so each kid shows up at least once per chapter while they're pursuing the Chosen One arc. So someone might not necessarily figure out which kid is the one that I figured out quickly.
Okay. I mean, guys, I guess the thing is like, just in general then, do you find that when you start, like, a lot of other writers come to me and they're like, so I have this idea for a character, and I'm like, that's a great idea for a character, and they're like, yeah, but it's not my main character, and I'm like, what? Why? Like, and so I'm curious if just like in general when that happens, like,
so usually I come up with like the story first and then like figure things out from there. In The City Between is the free webcomic that I'm doing now. That's the one where it was like werewolves and then more werewolves and then more werewolves. And the idea for that is like I want to be able to jump around and show different parts of the made up city that I made. So it's like each 80-page story is self-contained, but the main character gets fully developed because I'm going to them for a reason.
Right.
And it's to show off a particular angle of the city. So I do tend to flesh out the main character first.
Okay, that's good. That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
I'm trying. Do we do this something similar in your mind, or what do you guys think?
I mean, our process is it kind of it's a little bit scattershot.
Yeah,
Like
yes.
we bounce all over the place.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, we do start off with an idea for the story, and then in some cases, flesh out the settings and characters to fit that. I think in a lot of cases, though, we end up starting off with a character and then putting them in one of the settings that we've already established, and
so
consequences from that.
For me, it's the reason why fleshing out the supporting cast, usually then I use that to make them a main character of a different story later. So they're usually partly fleshed out in the City Between's case because I fleshed them out in another story first, and now they're getting their own story.
Nice.
Okay, that's awesome. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Curious, what's your design process for the look of the worlds in your comic?
So in the City Between, I wanted something that was more futuristic, and I was also leaning toward kind of an Art Deco-y look to I figured that would give the city a more unique style, and leaning on that makes it easier to design stuff that's not going to be less important because I already have a starting position.
Right.
And then for You Are the Chosen One, I thought about the world that they're gonna inhabit, and kind of while I was outlining it, I was figuring out things about the world, and then that led to designs, which then helped me figure out stuff while outlining. And each location is kind of inspired based on what civilizations that had the things I needed for the story. So the capital in You Are the Chosen One is on a delta that kind of looks like a lily because water lilies are important to their culture.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was like, okay, so since they're on this delta, I looked at some ancient Egypt, some Venice, some little places that would have water and canals and stuff inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did definitely notice that the pages of You're the Chosen One that I've seen so far is really well integrated, and I was really curious about that.
Actually, just sort of piggybacking off of that, you're talking about using different types of references, and one of the things I noticed on your website is that you have a section where you kind of show the photo references that you took of yourself for the panels, and could you tell us more about that, because I find that amazing.
So what I do is I rough out the page, and I like to do one stage at a time, so I will rough out the whole chapter, and then bribe some friends with pizza and have them pose, and they're using my rough layouts as reference for what they're supposed to do. So I kind of go into taking those photos knowing what I already want.
That's
and
awesome.
That's really cool.
And I love that you post them on your Twitter too.
That was one of the Patreon goals, is when my Patreon reached a certain level, I would start sharing them publicly. And
that's awesome.
I think that's really healthy too, because I think there's a real reluctance to embrace the fact that people use, the good and successful artists use, photo reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
it is weird. There is this weird,
it is a shaming thing.
hesitance to share that. But
it's one of those things where it was I made sure before, when I was getting close to reaching that goal, I made sure the friends who I was taking photos of are okay with me posting pictures of them. So that might be one side of it, is people might not want goofy pictures of them posted all over the internet. So.
Sure. Yeah. No, getting that permission is important. And no, you touched on this a little bit, how you draw like a lot of references and inspiration from other cultures. I love that you play with the mythologies of different cultures too. Can you tell us a little bit more about like, why this mythology appealed to you so much? Like, did that precede, your work in comics? What was that?
I just always liked myths and legends. So yeah, that did precede working in comics. I like to learn about different folklore things and just think they're neat.
Yeah. So, Carrie, I know you're into mythology as well.
I'm like sitting over here like, what's your favorite book on this? Have you listened to Lore? Because I'm like all about the same subject, and like I was the weird kid that had like, local legends and folklore of like the Pan Carolina region or something, like, not esoteric, but just something weird like that. And I was that creepy kid, checking out UFO books at like the local library. So I'm just like interested, like, did you, like, if you were always into that, did you sort of have a similar thing? Or
so I'm also dyslexic, so I didn't read much as a kid, but I watched a lot of TV, and it was just the fantasy stuff was just what grabbed me more. So
that's cool. So I have a question, somewhat selfishly, because I'm very interested in this. You are publishing You Are the Chosen One through Patreon. What are some of the main differences between, just publishing a regular webcomic versus publishing one through Patreon?
So throughout my career, I've been trying to experiment because the internet's always changing, so you don't want to like get stuck in one mode. And so I was doing the regular standard webcomic, and I kickstarted some books for it. And then when I launched The City Between, I did an experiment of what if I finished the book, kickstarted it, and then a year later it goes up online. So it's sort of, it going up online works as advertising for people to go buy the book. But that was before Patreon showed up. So that's sort of the easiest Patreon thing for a webcomic person to do is to put pages up early. But because the book was already out, everyone who would pay to read early had just bought the book and not backed my Patreon. So my Patreon wasn't doing as well as I think other people's Patreons, because there wasn't really a good incentive. Like I had, if enough people back this, then I'll do an extra thing for free for everyone, like posting the reference photos. And I also posted pencils. But You Are the Chosen One, while starting it, I realized like, well, if this is only on Patreon, then this can be the thing that makes people back my Patreon. And so that was a thing that I just launched this year. I don't know if it's going to work. I'll find out. But that is, so right now it's kind of in a loose experiment stage. Like maybe it will get me more people, maybe it won't. Patreon's interface is a little bit rough to read stuff in sequential order. So I think I might have to figure out a solution for it once I have more pages up. So I might have to start like linking PDFs of an entire chapter.
I love that. I love you touched on a topic that I don't think is really explored a lot, which is experimenting. I mean, there's not really like a clear-cut formula for making things work on Patreon or making things work online. I love that you have that experimentation mindset. Yeah, I'm sure you've done that with like the myriad of comics that you have out.
Yeah, that's partly why. Like, it's about trying to figure out new ways to make those dollars so you can keep living off comics. So.
Right. And on that topic, like I know a lot of budding comic artists do kind of struggle with that social media aspect or that marketing aspect. What's your typical advice for those new comic artists who do want to get the word out but not sure?
I would tell them that they should have their own website because, like I said, the internet changes so drastically all the time. Right now, like, using Instagram and Twitter is a great way to promote yourself, but like up until a few years ago, Tumblr was a great way to promote yourself. And if you weren't building your own stuff on top of Tumblr, like when Tumblr stopped being a place that people went, like now you can't be in reach of those people anymore.
Yeah.
So right now my website has a plugin that auto posts anything that I post on my website. It like will auto tweet, there's a new thing on the website, go read it. And the same with like when I post a picture, it auto puts it on Instagram. And so making sure you have a place to put your stuff that is not dependent on something that might not be there next year. So it's not, don't use Twitter, don't build up your Instagram or whatever is, but also make sure you have your own website, as so that way you aren't screwed if everyone stops using Twitter, or if
True. Can't really control what happens with these companies or what their service, you know, how that changes. So basically have your home base. Did you start off that way, or did you start off on a platform?
So I started off on a free webcomic hosting site called Keen Space, which I don't think exists anymore. Again, things change.
Yep.
Then I got my own website. Then and I've kind of tried to always keep my website growing. So
right.
Yes.
Cool. So I want to ask about another work of yours, The City Between. What was the inspiration for this urban fantasy world?
So The City Between is werewolves and vampires and stuff in a futuristic city, because I don't want to draw cars and I don't want to draw horses.
Fair.
That's legit valid.
Well, a lot of what City Between does is a response of me figuring out what the limits were on Sorcery 101. So Sorcery 101 does not actually take place in our world, but most people don't realize that until they start reading multiple pages. So part of The City Between is like, I want someone to immediately look at it and know that this is not our current day reality.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like I said, I don't want to draw horses, and I don't want to draw cars. So I'm built a city where everyone takes public transit.
Yeah.
Walkable cities.
Walkable cities.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like that way, because I was designing everything from the ground up. I sort of, while working on it, came to like, well, what if this world is more left than ours? Just not really like in a big affect the plot way, but since it's not our world, I can do what I want. They can live in a socialist society. So
as far as world building, are there other fictional works that you really like from a world building perspective?
So I really like Discworld. And I really liked Game of Thrones. I like Avatar: Last Airbender. As far as comics by Evan Dom are really good at world building.
Oh, okay.
And so it was kind of just like, I realized the stuff that I was getting drawn to was stuff where they got to build it from the ground up. So
yeah, that's really cool.
That is so cool. And world building is just one of those things that I find, like, I think all of us really love. And I think one of the things I personally very much appreciate is how the world building that you've done within your works is very rich, but it's also sort of understated. And that's a like that's a hard line to walk. So do you have any, like, just sort of going off of the conversation, do you have any suggestions for people who are like, I want to put all this exposition in, but
Don't. That's my advice. Don't explain anything. Just push people into the deep end, and they'll figure it out, or they'll stop reading it. So,
Yeah.
No exposition dumps, please. So, Kel, you've done work for Dark Horse. You've worked through Iron Circus. You've self-published. Were there any differences between the different publishing paths that surprised you?
Well, I made more money on all my Kickstarter books than off my Dark Horse book.
Wow.
Wild. And then with Iron Circus, it's interesting because Iron Circus publishes anthologies that I ran and organized on my own, and then they pick them up to keep them in print. So my deal with Iron Circus is like they're getting them into bookstores after I've already sold out a print run. So they're kind of just picking up what I have already finished. So
Okay.
And that's working out well. It was kind of serendipity, like at the time, one of the volumes of my Cautionary Fables series was running low. Like I had maybe 150 copies left. Spike at Iron Circus was looking for more kid-friendly books. And also one of the things that was limiting the Cautionary Fable books is they're kid-friendly, but kids don't really browse around online. So I sold them a lot at conventions, but I wasn't really selling them that much on my store because 8-year-olds aren't browsing the internet that way. So Iron Circus putting them out got them into like bookstores and libraries, and so now kids can get them easier, and so they're doing fairly well.
Oh, cool.
That's really cool. Do you find that writing for kids versus adults is easier or harder?
So with Cautionary Fables, it's mostly other people, and I'm organizing them and making sure they're all on time. And also, it's mostly just adapting tales that already exist. So there's a template on what you're supposed to do with that story. So like if you're telling someone Little Red Riding Hood, like you kind of know how Little Red Riding Hood's gonna go. So
yeah, makes sense. And this is a question for not just you, but the Tuppers as well. We've been doing the webcomic thing for a while now. But if you had advice for someone just getting into comics now in 2020 as a creator, what would your advice be?
Well, I already said the have your own website thing.
Yep.
Can agree with
Another
that.
thing is frequency. People remember you if you're posting frequently. So I would try to at least put something up each week, even if it's not a page like sketches or just getting something out there.
Yeah, that's advice we usually give as well. Like consistency brings people back. And also, what was the statistic, Carrie Allen? Like how many? It's like
it's something appalling. Like 80% of webcomics don't make it past like their 20th post or something. So.
Yeah, or they're 30. It's like, so I think it's 90% of webcomics don't make it past their 30th page. So, and then most webcomics struggle. The average that I was reading is like you start getting more notoriety and more well-known starting in the 5th year. And then things sort of start building up a lot more momentum from there. But that's also just like, if you're in webcomics to make like a crap load of money, you're in the wrong business.
If you're making comics to make money, you're in the right business.
We don't do this because we want to get rich. We do it because it's...
Dude, it's pretty hilarious how many people think I'm like rolling in the dough from the comic. It's interesting, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a craft of passion. I think another thing we usually tell creators related to the consistency thing, but trying to create a page buffer. Do you do that, Kel?
Well, like I said, the sitting between the storyline's done before it starts going up online. So yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we made the kind of dumb mistake of.
Yeah. We're just in a running gunfight with our posting schedule. That's
right.
Just like perpetually that one shot from Indiana Jones with the ball rolling behind him forever.
That ball is every Wednesday. But no, as you said, Kel, like even, I mean, we, for about 6 years, we have not missed a single Wednesday. Now, sometimes it might be like some post, it's always some post of some kind.
surprise hiatus.
Surprise hiatus, Alan broke his leg.
Yeah.
I remember that, yeah. Kel, when you were first starting off, like, you know, think back to your first year doing webcomics, was there ever a moment where you just got discouraged because things weren't picking up as much, or what was that first year like?
Well, fortunately, I started while I was in high school. So that first year, like, I didn't really have to worry about rent because I was 17 and in high school and still live with my parents and stuff. And
Yeah.
so,
okay, cool. I mean, never too early to start.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, what's one thing that you wish you'd known when you first got into webcomics?
Print resolution. When I started, I saved everything at web resolution and then had to redraw the beginning of Sorcery 101 for print because it was unprintable because I didn't save it at a high enough resolution.
Oh no.
Awful.
Did you have to redraw?
That's visceral. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was a lot.
It was a lot? Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think we luckily started off pretty high res, right?
We've been fortunate. We started off high res. Now, whether we're making pages which use printable colors, that's a whole other question.
Yeah.
Yep.
I tend to get a little bit crazy with the cheese whiz on that side of things.
Who are some other indie creators that you think should get more love and attention these days?
Well, I mentioned Evan Dom. He does great stuff. Blue Dale Quanti just ended their webcomic Oh Human Star, which is great. Olive Stevens, she does great stuff about werewolves as well. She has a book coming out called Artie, which is about teen werewolf girl. And I would have to like think more on it.
Yeah, those are good suggestions.
What's your advice for creatives struggling through this crazy ass year that needs to end now?
I don't know, man.
That's the answer.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what? That's a fair answer because who knows? But yeah, this has been it was really great getting to chat with you and I learned a lot of new things actually.
I did too.
So is there anything you'd like to plug and where can people find you?
So my website is kelmcdonald.com. And my Patreon, where you can read Youre the Chosen One, is patreon.com/kelmcdonald. And I'm on Twitter as Kelhound, which is spelled like Hellhound but with a K. And I'm on Instagram as Kel A. McDonald. And yeah, please back my Patreon and read Youre the Chosen One.
Yay! Do it!
Well, thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. I really appreciate it. And also, I have to say, your website is dope. Like, I love the comic page, it looks like a bookshelf.
That was the idea. Then that's all thanks to Kevin Wilson, who's a friend of mine that built my website, and he also builds website for the webcomic host Hiveworks.
We're gonna have to
And
that name
he's the guy with the glasses and a beard that's in a lot of my reference photos.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. And I realized, like, as I was going through that page, I was like, wait, these book spines are also clickable.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. Yeah, your work is very impressive.
It also, as you resize the window, it changes sizes. So.
Oh, snap. I'm going to have to play around with that. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was a pleasure. And, you know, stay safe and healthy. And everyone, make your comics in the right print resolution.
All right. For all of us. Bye.
Bye.